we will move on to our last presentation, which will be Ray Ryan from the Revenue Commissioners. So Ray, I will let you share your screen, and I'll let you get on with your presentation.
Yeah, my own name is Ray Ryan from Revenue Commissioners, and I'm from actually the Brexit unit, and my colleague Jerry Corcoran will be on from the Origin unit in relation to any questions and answers. So just stop my screen there, 2 seconds. I'm just going to give I suppose, concepts around the rules of origin rather than making anybody experts in relation to it. So when we talk about the rules of origin, we're actually talking about the nationality of the product in reality. So just because I purchase a product from a supplier in the UK, that doesn't mean the goods have actually originated in the UK, and it's important to remember that. They may have been imported from the EU, China, USA, and their origin may not have changed at all, so it's important to know that. And this is important in terms of the EU-UK TCA, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, because one of the factors that determines the rate of duty is the origin of the product. So again, under the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the preferential origin applies to goods of UK origin only. So that's where you apply the preferential duties, so it's important to remember that. Just in terms of the main principles, so again, we're not going to be experts after this presentation on rules of origin, but I'll just give you some of the sorry, I'm not sure if that's blocking. I'll give you some of the main principles that are common amongst a lot of different free trade agreements. So each free trade agreement will have specific requirements included, and these product-specific rules vary according to the product, the country, and the free trade agreement. So you cannot assume that the rule B for one product is the same for all partners with which the EU has a free trade agreement. It's important to remember that again. So you'll need to check the rule for each country you're trading with. And it's important to understand the rules of origin from both an importing and an exporting perspective. So the preferential duty rate is claimed by the importer, but it is the exporter who provides the necessary sorry, there's a screen going on in the background here, who provides the necessary information to prove origin. So in recent agreements, and including the EU TCA agreement, exporters can register in the REC system in order to be able to declare the origin of their goods. And the only exemption then would be for the requirement to prove origin from non-trade movements for in your baggage, etc. So just in terms of those common provisions, so when we talk about the rules of origin, we talk about whether the product or the material has originating status, and what they're trying to determine is whether the goods have been wholly obtained or they've been sufficiently worked in order to qualify for the preferential treatment. So wholly obtained mainly applies to natural products or goods made from them. So an easier way to think of this would be a cow born and reared in Ireland will always have Irish and therefore EU origin. And similarly, any meat or product made from that cow would also have IE or EU origin. So it's I suppose, an easy reference point. If a product or material is not wholly obtained, that must be sufficiently worked or processed in one of the FTA countries in order to obtain an agreement. So I'll give some examples in relation to sufficient and insufficient in later slides. There's also different types of accumulation depending on the agreement. I have highlighted there in bilateral and full, and they're the ones that apply to the EU-UK TCA, so I'll cover them in shortly. And then the concept of territoriality relates to where materials can be worked or processes. So there's no provision in TCA for any exception to this territoriality rule, and only operations to preserve in good condition or labelling or splitting of consignments under customs supervision is allowed in the third country. So just in terms of more of those common provisions, so direct transport means the goods must either travel directly between partner countries or under a customs transit procedure through a non-country partner. So again, from the GB to IE, it's usually direct transport, so that would apply. And then there's tolerance levels. So the general tolerance rule allows for final products to obtain originating status using a small amount of non-originating materials. So that the PSR is the product-specific rule, and the tolerance level for agricultural products under the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement is 15%. And again, just a reminder, you can't apply both the general tolerance rule and the derogation from territoriality at the same time, and obviously that doesn't apply for the EU TCA. So just, I said I'd cover some examples of the wholly obtained. So again, live animals born or raised there, products from live animals raised there, mineral products or other living natural resources extracted or taken from there, and vegetables, plants, or plant products harvested or gathered there. So they're examples of the origin obtained as wholly obtained goods. And just in terms of the sufficiently worked, so the main methods to consider are the value added. So this is where the value of the non-originating material does not exceed a certain percentage of the ex works price. So that ex works price is the combined costs of the material, labor, overheads, and profit. And the percentage will be set out under the product specific rules within the TCA. There's specific processes may be set out in the product specific rule. And remember, there'll be different rules again for the same product depending on the free trade agreement. So you may be importing something from Canada, it won't have the same rules applying to it from the UK. So again, just bear in mind that different free trade agreements would have different rules for the same products, or may have different rules for the same products. A change of tariff heading then means processing that changes the commodity code of the product from one heading to another. So for example, the raw hide that's been manufactured into shoes will change the commodity code itself. And finally, you can use a combination of value added, specific process, and the change of tariff heading methods. In relation to insufficient processing, then this the working or processing of non-originating material, it must go beyond insufficient or minimal processing to confer origin. So examples of insufficient or minimal operations, they will be preserving operations to ensure the products remain in good condition during transport or storage, the breaking up or assembly of packages, and simply mixing of products, whether or not of different kinds, and then the slaughter of animals, they'd all be considered insufficient processing. So it's important to bear that in mind. So just in terms of accumulation, I mentioned there was bilateral and full accumulation. So the next two slides will just go through a bit more detail in relation to that. So bilateral is the accumulation as a standard form of accumulation where there's only two partners to the FTA, and this is the basis for the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement. So again, it's materials originating in one partner country can be regarded as originating in the other partner country, and it's the standard form of accumulation in the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement. Just in terms of the full accumulation then, it applies to the working and processing of non-originating materials. So again, it's back to those product-specific rules, and the product-specific rules can be carried out for those non-originating materials in the parties to the free trade agreement. So again, it's the two types of accumulation that may apply, and it operates between the EU and UK, and also in countries of the EEA, African, Caribbean, Pacific countries. So it applies to a number of different options in terms of that full accumulation. So just in terms of, it was referenced in earlier slides, that heading 22309 for feed products. So this outlines the product specific rule for that heading and the change of tariff heading. So all materials of Chapter 2 and Chapter 4 used are wholly obtained, and then the total weight of those non-originating materials within the headings, again, these are all chapter headings within the classification codes, so an awareness around those. And you can see the breakdown there. So Chapter 10.1 to 10.4, or 10.7 to 10.11, and Chapter 11, and then the headings do not exceed 23 and 2303 do not exceed 20% of the weight of the product, and then the total weight of non-originating materials, again within that Chapter 17, do not exceed 20% of the weight of the product. So again, that just gives you an idea of the very specific rules that apply for different products, and that's just one example in relation to obviously the feeds which we're looking at today. And again, it's important to note that that claim for preferential treatment, so for imports into Ireland, that preferential claim can only be made where the goods are of UK origin. And then for imports to the UK, it must be of EU origin. So that's what applies under the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. And those product-specific rules specifies that the working or the processing required for non-originating goods to qualify under that preferential origin. So just in terms of accumulation of origin, if anyone's read the TCA, this is the way the article sets out, and that's the article Origin 4, and it's listed there. What it actually outlines is that under accumulation, under the TCA, a material or product originating in the UK under the rules of origin can be considered as wholly obtained in the EU when used as a material for the production of a product in the EU or Ireland, for the production once it goes beyond the insufficient working or processing. So that final product could acquire EU preferential origin under the TCA, and the preference can be claimed on import into the UK. And similarly, obviously, the reverse would apply. So material originating in the EU under the rules can be considered as wholly obtained in the UK when the material is used for the production of a product in the UK, provided that the production again goes beyond that insufficient and working processing which I mentioned earlier. So that final product will acquire the UK preferential origin from what we're talking about this in case of the import into Ireland or into the EU. So again, it's just an awareness around how the accumulation can apply to the products. So just in terms of examples, again, going back to that 2309, so the dog food put up for retail sale, this gives a further breakdown. So you have EU origin, which is meat of Chapter 2 at 20% by weight, the UK origin, which would be the wheat and the sugar, and it's split down there between 50% and 30%. So to obtain the EU origin for the finished dog food product, the UK wheat or sugar materials can be deemed as EU origin materials using the accumulation, and that bilateral accumulation, again, referring back to those product-specific rules, so they do not need to be met. So again, it's an awareness around how that applies, and then obviously the reverse applies when you're importing from the UK as well. So as there's more than insufficient processing, this dog food would acquire the EU origin under the rules of origin under that TCA agreement. So again, it's an awareness around how these weights can affect the rules of origin and how the TCA impacts on it. So just in terms of where you would find the detailed rules for the animal feed sector, in the rules of origin in Part 2 and Chapter 2 of the TCA, the product-specific rules are outlined there for agricultural products. So that Annex Origin 2 and at page 423 of the EU TCA, the link is actually there. Again, these will be shared as well, but it's easy enough to find online as well. And there are the relevant chapters and the relevant sections that will be relevant, obviously, to the animal feed sector if you want to review it. And there's a lot of detail, I suppose, in around what I've just covered very briefly. And obviously, depending on the different products and the different makeup products, it can impact on what the origin will be. So just in terms of the preferential origin, and it's a reminder as such that you always it needs to be proven to claim that preferential treatment. So there's a number of different ways, and they're listed out there on the screen. So again, the most recent FTAs, including the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, makes use of that registered exporters electronic system. So it's an awareness of that. The importer's knowledge, that's actually a relatively new concept, which is allowed under the TCA. And the importer's knowledge allows you to claim preferential treatment based on information in the form of supporting documents or any records provided by the exporter or the manufacturer, which you as an importer have possession of. So again, it's a new concept, but it's allowed under the TCA. So again, you need to claim the preferences on your customs declaration. If you don't, even if you put down UK origin on customs declaration, it won't actually automatically apply the preferential duty. You have to claim it, and then when you're claiming it, you do need to have those proofs and retain those proofs for up to 3 years. So again, it's a reminder around that and the benefits, obviously, if you're exporting to have the relevant proofs to show it's EU or Irish origin. And those verification procedures, again, just a reminder, it's keeping those evidence for at least 3 years, and they may be requested at the time of import in any post clearance, and it's a part of the process, I suppose, in terms of those rules of origin. I'd just like to thank you for your time. It was a very quick overview in terms of origin, the rules of origin. Obviously, the products we're talking about today, they have different makeups and different mixtures involved. So if you have detailed queries, you can send them into the origin queries there. We're obviously open to taking queries in the Q&A there, but there's contact details there if you want to send in very specific to your company or the products, and we can come back to you in relation to those. So thank you. Pass back to Tom.
Thank you very much for that, Ray.